Hello, fellow Trekkies, Trekkers, and Trekyardians. As always, I'm Captain Foley, and I'm joined by my good friend and co-host Samuel Cockings.
Hi, Stuart.
Hi. Today we have with us Mr. Scott Nakada, the pre-production designer on Star Trek Renegades. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Today we'll be discussing the HMS Icarus from Renegades. Now, we here at Trekyards have not got full authorization from Section 31 to give you all the specs on this ship just yet. So today's episode will be more of our impressions of the ship, the overall look and design based on a brief glimpse we've had of her thus far. And of course, we have the inside man to answer a few of our questions today. Now, I'm sure that after the release of Renegades, we will be able to cut through all the bureaucratic red tape and actually bring you a very detailed look at all of the ship's specific facts and figures and do a full-blown Trekyards episode on it. But until that happens, we hope to get you a little excited about this new ship and how she came to be. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, so like Stuart just said, well, there's been some great footage, even if it's split seconds from the trailer. But it's fair to say the Icarus is a very unique design and a definite departure from the standard Starfleet aesthetic. One can almost say they're a renegade from the aesthetic. Oh, okay. So at a surprisingly small length of 267 metres, this ship's in fact smaller than a Constitution class, smaller than an Intrepid class, and to give you a sense of perspective, it's about the same size as a Galaxy class nacelle, and about double the size of a Defiant. So that is a small ship. So Scott, tell us about the size of this ship and why the scale was chosen.
The size of the ship was determined really by the story requirements. Icarus being a not necessarily, shall we say, Starfleet vessel. Really, we didn't want to make the ship too large, but we didn't want to make it too small either. We didn't want it to go, or we did want to take it to have it be toe-to-toe with Starfleet vessels, but we wanted Starship, the Starfleet ships to really dwarf the Icarus. So we just really wanted conceptually for Starfleet to feel overwhelming, overpowering versus the smaller craft, which is supposed to be a much more pirate-esque, if you will, vessel.
The Icarus's registration is the HMS Icarus, NCX 75201, which is interesting that it does have a registration, but not a standard Federation one. So is this ship indeed a Federation ship, a Section 31 stealth ship, or like a mercenary or pirate craft, like you just said? Can you tell us what class she is, and if she is a cruiser, heavy cruiser, frigate? And what did you have in mind when you created this new class of ship?
Well, what we had in mind when we created this new class of ship was really a covert operations ship. So it's outfit with stealth technologies to make it undetectable, and cloaking devices, things like that.
So is it Section 31 then, or some other special agency?
See, that's the thing that we have yet to find out completely through the course of storytelling. So what we worked from when designing this ship, we being myself as the designer, our model maker, Roland Barron, and Tobias Richter, who brought the whole thing to life, was that this ship was built in secret by elements of Starfleet, Section 31, things of that nature. But it wound up becoming a pirate vessel over time. So when our captain, Lexa Singh, eventually got a hold of the ship, she simply relabeled it as HMS, kind of like a smack in the face to Starfleet, because at this point the ship's completely rogue. Right?
So is it the only one of its class then, or are there more based on it?
I don't know that for an absolute sure thing.
Is that still classified even to you, Scott?
That is. It really is. It might be part of a modified, or it might be part of a vessel class, and it's been significantly modified, having gone rogue and pirate, essentially. But it might be something else completely, where it might be just a one-off prototype. I really don't know what the writers have planned for any future release. And I don't know if we're even going to really touch on that, because it is such a unique vessel, having been built in secret. Myself, I see this as being a prototype, and that it was just simply taken over by Captain Singh. Well, being a prototype, Star Trek has a history of having an NX designation, and CX, Naval Commission, experimental, is just that. So it
was also the next phase of testing, as it were.
Exactly. So cool. This ship would simply be something that was taken rogue. Now, the writers and I, later on, after most of our visual effects were done, did discuss why the NCX was there. I thought it was kind of funny because they really didn't want any sort of hull markings on it after we had much of the visual effects done. But, no one really said anything, and everyone seemed to think it would look great. So we've got this pirate skull, this alien skull and crossbones, which has become a renegade symbol all over the hull. And that's to differentiate it from Starfleet. So someone said to me once, having a car without a license plate makes it stealthy, and I completely disagree with that, right? Because that's gonna have you stopped at every 5 feet, because you're gonna be running around without any type of registration on your vehicle, right? So to me, as a designer, it makes sense to put that registration number on the hull so that you're not stopped every 5 feet. And if you do get, and it being an Icarus being a stealth vessel, right? If you do draw attention, simply cloak and go away, right?
Yeah. But if you can't, this brings me into my next point. So one thing that was kind of obvious, and I think we definitely saw in the trailer, and after seeing it from every angle, this ship is quite well armed. In the trailer, we can see a light blue beam emanating from the bottom of the ship, potentially from those saucer tip weapons. Later on, we see darker blue beams emanating from the wing-mounted, what I call them, disruptors. We know there's we know they can blow through a Klingon battlecruiser, which is pretty impressive. We're looking at the pictures. You can also see it's got 4 front-mounted torpedoes, 2 back, got 6 different Starfleet-style phaser strips, top, bottom, and the sides of the saucer, and they've got turrets, all around it, top, bottom, and everything. So wow, this has it all, Scott. Talk us through this ship in terms of weaponry, in terms of firepower, why it has so many different sorts of weapons, and are turrets making a comeback for the 24th century?
Yes, turrets are making a comeback for the 24th century.
Okay.
But only limited. I qualify that because the turrets on the Icarus really are plasma turrets, right? So they really are a type of limited Romulan weaponry. Think of the output as being somewhat smaller than a main phaser array on like a Galaxy class, or even a secondary phaser array on a Galaxy class. It's capable of putting out a lot of firepower, but in smaller amounts, like a 4-inch cannon versus a 16-inch gun or something similar like that. I know that there are probably some naval guys out there going, "You don't know what he's talking about," and you could be right. But the analogy is about accurate. So they put out much less firepower than the main phaser arrays on the rest of the ship. Now, the reason why the ship is so heavily armed is, one, it's a renegade ship. That's what it is. It's designed to go out there and raid other vessels and whatnot, since it's gone rogue. So the crew on board have had time to strip down the prototype exterior and interior and rebuild it and use it as whatever they need to make it over time. So the ship itself has a large number of weapons on board and doesn't have ships what we think of as traditional systems on board necessarily, because it's an amalgam of different alien technologies.
So it's kind of like compared to the Maquis almost, one of the Maquis Raiders. Every ship's kind of different. They just kind of cannibalize and use what they need. So that's kind of cool.
Exactly. So this ship has the best of technologies from a number of different species and races. So, you know, the forward-mounted phaser cannons on the front end of each nacelle, for instance, completely Federation. Plasma weapons, you know, that are capable of doing things that we've never seen before in Trek are perhaps Romulan, perhaps some offshoot of Klingon technology. We really haven't explored that, but we know they're on the hull, and I'll leave that up to the writers for any other future story points.
So the wingtip weapons are phasers, not disruptors?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
There's a lot of phaser strips all over the ship.
There's a lot of phaser strips, and
there are,
which we've never seen before, and I think kind of makes so much sense. Like I said earlier, there's phaser strips on the side of the saucer section, which is such an interesting place to put them. Why haven't they done it before? Well done, you've reinvented the wheel, phaser strips.
Yeah. Now the split primary hull is very reminiscent of a Vorcha-class Klingon cruiser from TNG, and or even a stretched Equinox saucer with like a larger piece missing from the front there. So do you think the Klingons were contributors to this design, or was it all basically Starfleet? Like how did this design aesthetic come about for the ship, do you think?
The design aesthetic of the ship really evolved, I think, from the Prometheus class a little bit. That ship having its multi-vector assault mode just made sense to take that and progress with it. So each hull is, at least as the way I designed it on paper, capable of splitting off into different sections.
Ooh.
So you're saying this is a multi-vector assault mode craft?
I'm saying it was designed as that. It might not be anymore with the way that the crew have changed and altered the ship.
It wouldn't seem that that's the sort of thing that Renegade crew would do. I'd think they'd keep their power in one section rather than splitting off. Okay.
Yeah, I actually have a model of the Enterprise E, which I've cannibalized, turned the nacelles on their side, and taken a second kit and put it right on top of it. Looks fantastic, and that's in part what drove some of the inspiration for this. So in theory, these warp nacelles, these forward nacelles, can work independent of each other with two driving the warp engines and another two powering the combat systems. So we're looking at multiple warp cores potentially on board also.
Cool. So would you say that the weapon system is a little bit inspired by the races? I know you said they could be, but did you put the wing-mounted cannons specifically to sort of mimic the Klingon-style disruptors, do you think?
No, it came from a line from earlier Star Trek. Star Trek The Motion Picture specifically. I was thinking of one of the lines that they said where they mentioned the I believe it's Captain Decker mentions that the phasers are now tied directly into the warp engines, right? And I thought about that and I said, you know, what would this actually look if we pushed out the nacelles to the sides a little bit more and actually put phaser cannons on the ends of the warp engines? So I threw it down on paper and it looked good. Icarus's nacelles do glow blue. The plasma vents are along the sides, but it's a combat vessel, so they're armored. That's what it simply is. So we've got reduced venting capability, but they're still there, hence the blue glow and that armored plate that sits right over top of where traditionally the plasma vents would be.
But where are the Bassard collectors? Because I don't see any red Bassards on the nacelles.
Yeah, the position for the Bassards are obviously taken up by the phaser cannons.
Yeah.
But we do have Bassard collectors in the location of where a navigational deflector would normally be. That being said, the reason why they were moved is because, well, it's very handy to have a gas can collecting gas somewhere on the ship. And in this case, we have 2 of them on the upper and lower centers of the ship.
So those big bump sections with the red glows, those are the Bassard collectors then?
Those are the Bassard collectors. That allows us to still collect gas, and it gives the ship an angry look to it also. So obviously, having fuel on board and replenishing your fuel supply is very important to a starship, and this gives us that capability. So I know that there's going to be a question about navigational deflecting, right? Everyone needs a navigational deflector, and I just like to point out.
I'll set you up on this. Scott, there's no deflector. Tell us about the navigational deflector. There you go.
Okay. So, navigational deflectors. There's a history in Star Trek where we simply don't see navigational deflectors. Miranda-class starships, the USS Grissom, of ships that just simply don't have navigational deflectors. The thought being that the ship just extends its shield array around the vessel a little bit more. So, it's not a necessity. Certainly we see it on larger class vessels, and it's assumably because, there's just more to protect as far as space frame goes.
So are there not any parts of the ship that actually detect in the same way the sensor dish would? Because surely you need some form of long-range sensor capacity or yeah.
Well, there are long-range sensors on Icarus. Those are the white pods on the mounted on top and the bottom of the nacelles, the forward antennas, and then the aft antennas.
So those aren't weapons then at the front, those 2 spikes?
No. They're a form of alien technology that simply just operate differently from standardized Federation sensors, which would be along the leading edges where those phaser strips are.
Cool.
Okay, well, I've got to ask this next question then. For the size of the ship, how many shuttles can you see it having? And are there various types of shuttles? Like, for example, are there standard shuttles as well as work bees for carrying out repairs or anything? Or are there any kind of assault shuttles or perhaps even fighters? Or maybe even some uniquely badass renegade ones? We want to see badass.
Now, I could see easily some badass renegade shuttles coming off this, and I don't really see too much in the way of work bees or any other maintenance vehicles out there. I get the feeling from the writers that the ship would simply put down on a planet for repairs somewhere, and the crew would just go out there and fix it if it came down to it.
So no work bee, just a big cannon on the front.
Yeah, we have a big gun.
Yeah,
it's just a flying gun with some.
Yeah. When you're a renegade, you don't really think about these other things too much, Assumably, also we have other more sophisticated auto repair systems on board.
Especially Section 31. I mean, who knows? It could be anything. We just don't know. Well, you might,
exactly.
But we don't.
This is all writers' playground.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, with the Icarus, I believe that we have the capability of having 2, maybe 3 shuttles on board.
Oh, any captain's yacht? Can you see being on there? I didn't see it in the plans or in the structuring, but I guess if it could split into 3, maybe there's still some part of that left. That could be the captain's yacht, or just
no. Unfortunately for Icarus, maybe some sister vessel that maybe has been unaltered though. Icarus does not have a captain's yacht. Instead, we have a plasma turret in that location.
Yes, you do. So we've got to talk about the split style of this ship. It has a saucer, like obviously most Federation ships. And then you've got those 2 secondary hulls, which are identical and sort of flipped and very distinct. Is this ship actually then constructed maybe out of 2 ships, 2 secondary hulls sort of put together to create a full ship? It certainly gives it a very distinct look.
Well, again, the 2 split hulls being put together, I don't really see that as being a case where, it was simply just 2 split hulls put together. But I do see it in a case where it is specifically designed that way to be 2 separate hulls. So we have a primary, secondary, and tertiary hulls. Right? Each the secondary and the tertiary hulls have their own warp cores on board to provide the nacelles with extra power. So unfortunately, we're looking at redundant engine rooms, but these hulls serves very specific, distinct purposes. One obviously is for having a larger shuttle bay, more storage capacity on board. The other is packed with more warp equipment, repair facilities, landing struts, that sort of thing. Just things that we don't normally need on a regular Federation ship necessarily. Of course, we've got sleeping bunks and other facilities.
And obviously, you've got to store those 10,000 photon torpedoes somewhere, because they're going to be packing.
Oh yeah, you have to totally have those facilities for storage somewhere, especially with all the loot and whatnot that you would need to operate your ship.
Yeah,
the raping, the pillaging, and the plundering. We love pirates, don't we?
That's right.
Now, I know we talked about the interior just now, but we didn't really see much of it in the brief glimpses we got in the trailer, but it's a rather dark look. Is there anything else you can tell us that's unique about the inside of the ship? And does the ship have any special capabilities, such as cloak, ablative hull armor, quantum slipstream, or any of the armor technology that Voyager acquired from the future parallel Janeway in the series finale Endgame?
Because that's got to be somewhere, hasn't it? I mean, they're not going to let that technology stay on Voyager. So what's it got, Scott? Tell us.
Well, the interior of the ship is very Spartan. Again, it was launched. It was probably launched as a prototype. Indeed, that's what we built our concept around. But the ship again has been essentially rogue, renegade, pirate, very, very on its own. Essentially, just a renegade out there having to survive. So its interior has been stripped back to bare bulkheads, but it does offer some special, unique features to it. I like to think of it as essentially having your interior of your vessel like a massive holodeck, if you will, but for utilitarian purposes. So if you want to have a table to your left, you can put that table to your left, or set up whatever other facilities that you need at your beck and call. Of course, it has certain bonuses with it as well, so such as communicating directly with people. You can just call up an image and have it res right in front of you, as opposed to going to a specialized holographic suite.
So it's safe to say the ship has hollow emitters everywhere.
Yeah.
So you can basically construct walls or tables or whatever you want, wherever you need.
That would make perfect sense, yeah.
That's a perfect design evolution for Starfleet, I think. I like that.
I like the idea of having the ability to wake up in the morning and just say, I don't like this bridge. I want to change this. Computer, reset.
Well, it's good. You're in the Enterprise J territory, just like Doug Drexler said.
It's an interesting concept, too, because would those hollow emitters have included replicator systems, so you don't even need to go to a replicator terminal? You can just ask for a cup of coffee, and it's there right beside you. That would be so cool.
That's very advanced, Stuart. You're getting a bit far now, aren't you? Even for Section 31.
Well, I could tell you more, but then we'd have to end the show.
Oh.
You could tell us, but then you'd have to kill us, is what he's saying.
I would never say that.